Is Australia at risk of becoming the US's 51st state?
So AUKUS is really about, in American terms, the military control of Australia.
AUKUS is a trilateral security partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States. In September 2021, leaders of these three countries came together to announce their partnership on security interests and defence capabilities. But the deal's primary focus is controversial. The pact focuses on supporting Australia in acquiring a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, SSN, in the Asia-Pacific region by the end of 2040, a date some experts deem too optimistic for such an immense project. In March 2023, the alliance announced an optimal pathway. Firstly, Australian military and civilian personnel would embed with American and British naval forces for training. Then, by 2027, the United Kingdom and the United States would establish a rotational presence of submarines in the region. Following this, the US would sell 3 Virginia-class submarines to Australia, with potential to sell 2 more to cover the country's naval needs until its own are constructed. The plan claims to provide Australia with the sovereign capability to own and operate SSNs at the earliest possible date. Yet many experts and politicians are sceptical of the proposal, claiming that such a deal would increase Australia's dependence on the US. Clinton Fernandez, a former Australian Army intelligence officer, warned that the AUKUS pact would make it impossible for Australia to have an independent defence policy, as the relationship already is a transactional and unequal one, in which Australia abides by the US grand strategy. And Fernandez is not the only one. Former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull argued that relying on the sale of US submarines until the ones under AUKUS are built would completely jeopardise Australia's submarine capability for at least a decade. With the US lacking in spare submarine supply, it is more likely that American submarines would be stationed indefinitely at Australian bases. Australia will then have built ports and paid for American submarines that they have no control over. In a recent statement, another former Prime Minister, Paul Keating, criticised the pact, saying that the country had become a target by joining the military alliance with the UK and US. In particular, there are concerns that AUKUS is unnecessarily dragging Australia into the US-China rivalry by supporting the presence of US submarines in the Asia-Pacific region. Strategist Hugh White has similarly warned that supporting this partnership is not a smart way to go, given China's growing economic and military power. Moreover, AUKUS has been criticised as being a drag on Australia's economy with uncertain returns. Canberra has already contributed $2 billion to expanding the United States submarine industrial base, despite any guarantee that the submarines will even be delivered. The minimum cost of the total project has been billed at $180 billion, but would only create 20,000 jobs, a relatively small return. Some experts are also concerned that AUKUS uses technical loopholes that create a double standard with respect to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. A non-nuclear country like Australia developing nuclear-powered ships, while allowed under the treaty, could set a precedent for countries to use the excuse of naval reactor programs to increase their nuclear capabilities. And in addition to the immense financial costs and accelerating a nuclear arms race, critics have pointed out that AUKUS only diverts attention from the climate crisis. Australia has suffered from increasingly devastating bushfires and floods in recent years, with the climate crisis presenting a guaranteed high-risk threat. Many feel that funding military expansion leaves decarbonisation by the wayside and will undermine the international cooperation needed to cut emissions by heightening regional tensions. But supporters argue that AUKUS is necessary to navigate increasingly complex geopolitics in the region and deter future aggression from China. Given the high stakes, will the AUKUS deal be worth its cost for Australia?